My name is Jesse Marquez. I'm the founder and executive director of the Coalition for a Safe Environment. We're an environmental justice organization headquartered in Wilmington. And believe it or not, this is our 20th year anniversary of servicing the harbor communities in the South Bay as well as Los Angeles. Today we're here for a special moment, a special meeting, a special presentation. And I want to first introduce you who will be our speakers. To my immediate left is Dr. Jill Johnston. She's professor at the Keck USC School of Medicine. We have Isa Pulido. He is a Carson High School graduate, a Carson resident, and he also did a bold thing that has never been done before. He actually took a water sample from the Dominguez Channel and has the test lab results to share with you. All the way at the end here we have Fatima Zubair, and she is also a Carson resident, but she's also a teacher. She's a chemistry teacher and a robotics teacher here in the South Bay area. To my right, I have our Honorable Mayor Pro Tem, Jim Deere, and we have a newly elected councilwoman, Robles, that just got elected as of yesterday. I mean, Arlene Robles. Rojas. Newly elected Arlene Rojas. So I'll go ahead and begin first as to why we're here today, and then allow each one of our speakers to come up to the mic here. As we all know, we're here because there is a crisis going on in the city of Carson. Approximately 4 or 5 weeks ago, residents began to detect an odor in the air. This odor is not just a regular everyday type odor, it's one that has a very strong rotten egg pungent smell to it. So you can always determine it when you smell it in the air, and it's terrible. Our organization does environmental air quality monitoring here in the LA and the South Bay areas. We have some of our own rooftop instruments as well as some handheld instruments. So for over 20 years, we've learned through our community science projects, through our community science participation in resolving issues, how to use these instruments and then how to understand what's out there in the world. Our concern now is the fact that it's been 4 or 5 weeks. We have the South Coast Air Quality Management District. We have LA County Department of Public Health. We have LA County Department of Public Works. And they have not been able to find the source of the hydrogen sulfide. Now, yes, you can smell hydrogen sulfide, and yes, you smell it here in the Dominguez Channel and everywhere around it. Well, we've looked at that. We've also looked at other possibilities. There was a fire at a warehouse that also had debris fall into the Dominguez Channel. So whenever there are accidents and incidents that occur, right behind each other, sometimes it's hard to see the forest of the trees and determine what is the real problem. Well, our concern is that this hydrogen sulfide is something that stands out. What's been told to the public is that it's probably organic matter that is decaying that is creating the hydrogen sulfide. Well, the problem with that is that it takes tons and tons of decaying organic matter and garbage. It must also be in a confined space with little to no oxygen in order for it to produce the quantity that is coming out. So that is one area right there. What we've done is now identify 3 areas of research that we are asking to be conducted. So one is the Dominguez Channel, which is up here as the origin source. That means somewhere there is bacteria rotting, decaying, that is causing the creation of the hydrogen sulfide. The only problem is it's now been 4 or 5 weeks, and you can always find it. So where is it hidden? The other alternative that we're looking at is that typically the only company that has large quantities of hydrogen sulfide in the manufacturing process are the oil refineries. Well, naturally the closest one here is the Marathon Oil Refinery in Carson, and it has the other division in Wilmington. They have stated that there is no leak of this gas coming from their facility, that their instrumentation, which is their fence line instrumentation, is detecting it. Well, the problem with that is that it has been going off every day, 24 hours a day. Our organization, we are registered to get public alert notices, and we have now received over 100 public alert notices in the last 45 days. Well, what we have learned by looking at all the oil refinery fence line monitoring systems is that Marathon has been the one putting out the most or detecting the most frequently. The Wilmington Marathon facility has also been detecting it. Further south, we have the Valero Ultrafine refinery. It's also detecting it. But the strange portion now is that even the Torrance refinery air quality monitors are picking it up. And the West Wilmington Phillips 66 on Anaheim Street near Harvard College is also detecting it. That presents a new problem. Because see, if none of the refineries are guilty, then where is it coming from? And that leads us to a more serious situation, because now we're talking about something that happened in September. There was an earthquake in Carson. Did that earthquake underground fault somehow cause some type of land shift so that gases can now escape? Now, whenever there's oil fields, hydrogen sulfide gas is one of the things that's underground there all the time, okay? However, another situation though is that all of the Los Angeles, Long Beach, South Bay areas have been, for almost a century, oil well drilling sites. There are literally thousands of closed down and abandoned oil wells throughout the cities here. So if there was an earthquake and the land shift, there is a possibility some of those well shafts could have been damaged. And so therefore, that would be a third source that would cover the general area. Okay? So what we've done is, and you'll all get a handout of this, is that this poster is in a fact sheet. So we've identified the steps that need to be done under each category to do their validated research. And at the same time, we list mitigation. What type of mitigation should be done to offset these impacts? Now, what has occurred, and what we've mentioned already in our press release, we have sent an official request to the U.S. EPA Region 9 office in San Francisco for them to take over the investigation and for the oversight as to what is to be done in the future. Residents are fed up. Hundreds of them are now living in motels and hotels because it's not safe for them to live in their homes. We have our local agencies who can't seem to get a grip on what needs to be done. This is why it's important oftentimes that when there are community residents, like all these friends of mine right here, who are now elected officials, appointed officials, campaigners running for office. We have a doctor, research scientist from USC here. When we all team up, whenever there is a crisis, whenever there's an accident, whenever there's an incident, it is better to create an advisory committee so that you have the best minds working on a solution. Unfortunately, the county and AQMD has not outreached to the community for support, and that is where they're losing the battle. This is not a short-term thing. It's already lasted 4 or 5 weeks. And if an earthquake fault happens to be the culprit sometime down the line here, then we are in a serious crisis mode, because then what do we do there? We'll have to bring in the Southern California Earthquake Center, the USGS, to come into the picture here to assist us. So I will stop now for a few minutes and then let each of our speakers come forward.
Today, my name is Dr. Jill Johnston. I'm an exposure scientist and environmental epidemiologist at the Keck School of Medicine at USC. And I have studied the impact of odor and compounds and hydrogen sulfide on community health. And from this, we know it is not merely or just a public nuisance, but it's also toxic chemicals that can impact people living nearby, people breathing in, through many different pathways, as well as negatively impact both mental health and social well-being. So there's an abundance of evidence that suggests these kinds of odorant compounds can be toxicologically significant. Research finds that odors aren't just a warning about potential risks yet to come, but they, in and of themselves, can cause adverse health impacts. So these are known, for examples, to be headaches, nausea, eye, nose, and throat irritation, as well as other potentially more severe consequences like altering and suppressing immune function, wheezing, asthma, and allergic reactions. These kinds of odors are also associated with acute blood pressure increases and can contribute to the development of chronic hypertension. So specifically, hydrogen sulfide is known to have adverse acute effects as well as chronic effects from even short-term exposure. They can impact a lot of organs in the body, including mucous membranes, the respiratory system, the nervous system, cardiovascular system, as well as your gastrointestinal system. So increasingly, we have evidence from scientific studies that show that even at low levels, there are adverse risks from exposure to hydrogen sulfide. These include nasal symptoms, upper respiratory infections, cough, and headaches. And we see these even at low levels of exposure, and even those that last only a short time. So for example, there was a study in Nebraska that found 30-minute exposure to hydrogen sulfide increased hospital visits for respiratory disease. So we also know other impacts can be psychosocial effects of these compounds. So for example, it's related to negative mood, stress, feeling anxious, as well as annoyance. And oftentimes these odors impact people's ability to enjoy their property and go on their daily activities, such as gardening, walking, having cookouts with family, sitting on the porch, and can interrupt sleep. All of these can impact both your mental health as well as your physical health. So I think it's really important to keep in mind, based on the scientific evidence, that these odors aren't just a nuisance, but really they can cause acute and chronic health problems for the community. And that's why it's really important to address it in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Arlene Rojas, ARLEENROJAS. And thank you. Yes, I was newly elected probably hours ago. So thank you for having me today. And I do agree that an independent investigation should be conducted. And with my 31 years with the background in public safety, that is one of my priorities. So this investigation should be done in a thorough and expeditious manner. And that is something I will bring to the city of Carson, so that whenever we do have any problems, something like this where we don't know exactly how to do, we will know how and what resources we need to take care of this problem. So again, thank you, and we will work together to get this done for our community. Okay, and thank you everyone.
Thank you, Jesse Marquez. I was going to request a lunch break from Isa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. My name is Jim Deere, spelled Jimdear. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Carson, and we have a crisis at hand. Behind me is the Dominguez Channel, formerly known as the Gardena Valley Creek. It is a watershed that stretches from the city of El Segundo, Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lawndale, Gardena, Torrance, Los Angeles to Carson, and from Carson it moves through Wilmington to the ocean, to the harbor. So this water channel is in crisis. That means that we, the people of Carson, are in crisis. Unfortunately, we have a crisis of leadership at City Hall right now. We are trying to get into the meeting with the EPA, federal EPA, every morning at 10:30. The EPA is meeting with the County of Los Angeles. It is a technical meeting, but the city is excluded at this point. We need to change that. We can change that by forcing the administration of the city to do what needs to be done. We know that the city was lax, the city was late, and the city is the cause of not having action soon enough. Together with the county, we should work together. We have a newly elected councilwoman who's with us today, Arlene Rojas, and I think that will be a catalyst for change. I also want to mention that we want the state of California, Governor Newsom and his administration, to declare a state of emergency. The city council, we declared it. The county has declared it. We now need the state to declare it in order for the EPA in Washington, D.C. to take action. Those are the things that need to be done. We can talk about it all we want, but unless we have action, unless we have actual material change, the people of Carson are going to continue to suffer. You that are here today, you can smell the stench. It's primarily, I'm not a scientist either, but it's primarily hydrogen sulfide, but there are other gases emanating from the channel as well. The cause of that must be discovered. And I want to thank the media for being here, because without you, the bureaucrats will not act. Without you, some elected officials will not act. So you do a wonderful job. You don't always get it right, but that's okay. You're human too. So I want to conclude by saying that this press conference should be the point where change takes place. This should be the point where the Federal Environmental Protection Agency starts to take action. I plead with them to do that. I demand they do that on behalf of the citizens of the city of Carson and the surrounding communities that are also affected by this hydrogen sulfide stench. It is damaging to people's health. It needs to be stopped now. Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's get some real action. We must work on the basis of science, not emotion, not rumor, but we have to have the scientific reason it is happening. That's why we have Dr. Johnson here today, and that's why we want the EPA to do an investigation to find exactly what is the cause of this stench. We know that bacteria in an environment where there's no oxygen will produce hydrogen sulfide. We know that. We know that there's decaying plant matter and animal decaying carcasses in there. Now, the last point I'd like to make is this. This disaster should become a catalyst for action after it's cleaned up. After we solve the problem of the cause and stop the cause, then we don't stop. We now want this watershed to become a healthy environment for the animals that live there, and therefore the people that live around it. We want this watershed to be maintained. It has not been maintained. We want it to be improved so that waterfowl, the creatures living in the ocean and in this water, because it's brackish water, can survive. The birds that come through, all the animals that live around this watershed, they need a healthy environment, because if they don't have a healthy environment, ladies and gentlemen, the humans don't have a healthy environment. We live together on this planet. We need to make sure that this problem is solved, and in the future, the money, I don't care if it takes millions and millions of dollars, but there's federal, state, there's foundation grants, there's lots of sources of money. It's just a matter of being organized and of being able to get that money together in a process of cleaning this environment. Thank you very much. Again, Jim Deere, Mayor Pro Tem of Carson.
Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Marquez and everyone for being in attendance today. My name's Isa Pulido, I-S-A-P-U-L-I-D-O, lifelong resident here in the city of Carson. First and foremost, I just wanted to address, just as a resident, entirely saying that this nuisance is not a nuisance. This is an emergency, a state of emergency. We have residents who are on Facebook. We have residents who, on a day-to-day in our neighboring cities, who are suffering. I have neighbors who are suffering. Lung, throat irritation, watery eyes, mental fog, a lot of distress. We have senior citizens who are suffering. We also have children and pregnant moms who are going through a lot, suffering on a day-to-day. I have to state that again because this is something that needs to be treated. This is something that definitely needs to be mitigated and fixed. So,
can you hear me? Okay, so I learned I need to spell my name, right? Okay, so I have a long name, so be patient with me. So Fatima Iqbal Zubair. So it's Fatima, and then my last name is Iqbal-Zubair. Okay, that's what you told me to show.
How do you say it?
Fatima, just call me Fatima. Yeah, I think I'm a little Fatima. Okay, yeah, so no, this is a very serious matter. So I'm speaking to you today as a Carson resident, as a mother to a 7-year-old who lives like less than 2 miles from our refinery, as a teacher from Watts, which is also another very impacted community. And I'm also speaking to you as an Assembly District 64 delegate, as a California Democratic Party Executive Board member. So first I want to thank all the elected officials, that have put their time into this, including our current Carson City Council. Things can always be done better. And that's why we're here, right? We want to demand that things be done even better and work in collaboration with them. So we're really here, like many of you already heard, because it's been over a month. It's been over a month, right? And I want to just point to this, because this hasn't been mentioned yet. Do you remember when the spill happened in Huntington Beach, right, from offshore drilling? How swift was the perpetrator found? How quick action was taken? It even led to a new bill in the legislature to limit offshore drilling, right? So just remember that. And I want to, I've talked a lot as an advocate, as a resident, about environmental racism. We're afraid to say this word. We shouldn't be, because it's based in science, it's based in math. When you look at where the most public health crises are happening, the highest rates of asthma, cancer, nosebleeds, it's in communities like Carson, Wilmington, Watts, Compton. And when we think of Huntington Beach, right? Is it that action was done so fast because our leaders care more, right? Our system cares more when it's not a disenfranchised community. I think it is. And we don't see, so when we had this happen, right? Everyone smells hydrogen sulfide, but we know, right? I know I'm sure our researcher here, everyone knows that not all gases smell, right? Everyone, the community's waking up, and I'm thankful for at least that, because we have this gas that smells. But you know what? This community has been polluted with so many gases for so many years, for decades. So I don't want us to forget that. And so that's why there's really no excuse when people say we need to wait, when we need time. We've lived next to drilling, next to idle oil wells, active oil wells, next to water that's been polluted for decades. So to say that, that we're not ready or we need time, right? It doesn't cut it, because the point of government is exactly that. When there's a crisis, you've had a plan in place that you can act, as Arlene said, immediately, not in 2 days, immediately. And all of this that has been happening for a long time has affected the public health of our community. We do have high rates of cancer. We do have high rates of asthma. We have earlier deaths. Even just looking at Carson, I was on an EPA meeting, and looking at even areas of Carson that are closer to environmental hazards, the life expectancy is like 5 years, lower than other parts. This is a very real thing. We talk about things and look at things like police brutality because that's easy for us to understand, and we should talk about that as well. But a lot of times environmental hazards are a silent killer, and they're a long-term killer. And we have to remember that that doesn't make it any better or any less important than tackling issues like police brutality. It's just as important. And this is why it's unjust, right? This is why it's exactly why it's unjust, because it's been happening for a long time. So we are here to demand, right, that our state, our national government work together to demand call a state of emergency. The county already has, so thank you to our county for doing that. But our state, our national government has to get involved right away and call a state of emergency. Demand, like Arlene mentioned, a full independent investigation. Look, the truth is a lot of our environmental agencies like EPA don't always have the best track record, right? And this is rated by groups like SEHA and things like that. It's not my opinion, right? And so we need to hold agencies accountable. elected officials accountable. And the way we do that is a full independent investigation. That is how we'll resolve this crisis. Not to just have a band-aid solution, but we need to make sure that we really find the perpetrator so that this doesn't happen again. We might solve this, but you don't think 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, if we don't really find the true cause, we try to cover up the corporate or the industrial interest that is doing this will happen again. Unless marginalized communities stand up and demand accountability and transparency, I guarantee it'll happen again, because that's how it's been written in history. So, we deserve, I just want to end with this, we deserve to live in healthy communities with clean air and clean water. I believe that's a human right. It's the most basic human right. We deserve to live in good health each and every day. So thank you to everyone here for bringing light to this issue, and and I hope that this gets resolved so that not only is it taken care of, but that it doesn't happen again.